There is absolutely a stigma around mental health professionals who have a diagnosis of their own. Sure, I have a mental illness. I won't deny that. I will scream that from a rooftop. I finally am at a place where I don't feel shame. Starting at the age of 8, I began feeling the isolation, the emptiness, the existential dread, and kind of felt like being a ghost among the living. When I was 17, 3 days before my high school graduation, I did attempt suicide and ended up in a psychiatric unit, and really continued to struggle with the suicidal thoughts, which I do struggle with, time to time now. I'm not better in the sense that there's no cure for mental illness. There's treatment, there's good treatment, but it doesn't go away. It's chronic, it's unrelenting, and it's hellish. As I got older and found ways to manage my own mental illness, I was able to look back on these experiences kind of with a critical eye and say, okay, how could that person have engaged with me in a way that was more helpful? When I found out that a patient of mine had killed herself, I wondered if I was unfit as a provider. I really began to feel like an imposter, or maybe I was inadequate to care for someone who was experiencing the same thing that I was caring for. I think I needed to come back to the reality of the situation, which is that suicide is a symptom of mental illness. For as long as I'm going to treat mental illness, I'm going to encounter people who are actively suicidal. As much as it would be great to say that there's no stigma within the medical community, that's absolutely not true, because it's not just the fear and the panic, but there's a lot of legal and liability issues when you are encountering a suicidal person. Some physicians only receive about a month of psychiatric training in their residency. They're not well equipped to deal with the symptoms of mental illness. In fact, the therapist that I had been seeing before I made my attempt told me that if I ever did bring suicidal thoughts to a session, she would discontinue seeing me. This person was supposed to care for me, but instead used guilt and shame to take the liability off of herself. We cannot afford to keep acting like suicide is a secret. I don't know that I would have done this interview 5 years ago. I have had to work so hard through the shame and the guilt. There is a period of coming out as a mentally ill person, especially if people know you and they've known you your whole life as a person who's high functioning and seems strong and confident. There are a lot of friends of mine who don't know about my mental illness. I hope that by talking about my mental illness, there's someone out there who feels a little bit less stigmatized, who feels less shame and less guilt, and understands that mental illness is not their fault. You can be a person with trauma and still, despite that, have a career, be high functioning. My mental illness or experiences that I've had in my past do not preclude me from doing meaningful work with others. It's almost irrelevant from a viewpoint of someone who both treats and is diagnosed with mental illness. F*** stigma.